All right. Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents, and welcome to this week's live edition of Two Day with Two Cents for November 3rd, 2018. I'm joined by the Dark Conservatarian and Scorch88 right now. We're going to be discussing a couple of the biggest news stories this week. Your weekly news wrap up as normal, except this time it's live. Y'all are free to give us your real-time feedback. I'm keeping an eye on the chat window here. So our first news story of the week, it's close tie for my favorite. These first two were definitely both stories worth discussing. But the first one, everyone remembers not so long ago when Brett Kavanaugh was undergoing his confirmation to the U.S. Supreme Court. We had multiple accusations of sexual assault against him. We were assured by the radical left that women never make these kinds of things up. We heard the chants of "We believe survivors, we believe survivors." And, you know, if a woman says she was sexually assaulted, then she was. No evidence needed. Well, as it turns out, a woman by the name of Judy Monroe Layton has admitted now, after her story fell apart under investigation, that a story she reported to the Senate's Judicial Committee, that claiming that Kavanaugh had raped her and a friend in the backseat of a car was entirely fabricated. She did it to get attention and to try and get him to stop him from reaching the U.S. Supreme Court. So she has been referred to the Department of Justice for charges. I find that very satisfying, especially since in the course of these conversations, oftentimes what the radical left says is, well, you can't punish false accusers because it might discourage real accusers from coming forward. Either of you have anything to say about that?
Just gotta say, imagine my shock.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, it does seem like bullshit, but it doesn't seem as laughable as what is the girl's name? Like Julie Swetnick or something like that.
Julie Swetnick. That she was Michael Avenatti's client, and she has been both her and Avenatti have been referred to the Department of Justice for an investigation because for providing false statements to the committee.
Yeah.
Right, but didn't Swetnick say that she had 4 people who could corroborate her story? One of them turned out to be dead. 2 of them had no comment, and the 4th person did bring forth their testimony, but it was uncorroborative with her story.
Yes, basically, she named 4 people that she said could corroborate her story. You are correct. 1 was deceased. 2 did not respond for comment, and 1 claimed he does not know Julie Swetnick. But what was worse is that in her sworn statement to Congress, she had said she knew that Kavanaugh spiked the punch. She knew that he raped multiple women. But basically, the whole essence of her story was that she had knowledge that he specifically spiked the punch at these parties and orchestrated gang rapes. Then when she was interviewed on MSNBC, she basically walked back all those statements and just said, well, you know, I didn't actually see him spike the punch. I just saw him standing by the punch bowl. Okay, that's a little different than you actually saw him spike the punch. So you're saying you saw him rape someone? Well, not exactly. I saw him outside the room. Okay, basically her story fell apart. Not to mention Avenatti has a number of. Just today I didn't have a chance to research this one very hard, but Avenatti has there's at least one case where Avenatti owes a former employee $5 million. There's now a restaurant owner claiming he owes him several thousand, if not $100,000. So Avenatti is not looking like he's a particularly credible person at the moment.
Not at all.
But yeah, but the whole ridiculous thing, this whole notion, this proves that the claim women never lie about this sort of thing is completely bogus. And perhaps the most credible, and I mean, it's funny that we even have to say most credible, but I would say the most credible of all these stories was probably Dr. Ford's. And she claimed specifically during her testimony that she had nothing to gain from this. Well, as it turns out, she is now a multimillionaire thanks to the amount of money that was raised for her on GoFundMe. She was given a key to the city by her in her hometown. And when you consider the book deals and things she has coming, very difficult to say she had nothing to gain from all this.
Yeah, it's not like she's set for a long time now.
Sad ending.
Yes. And no, as I said in 2 Day with 2 Cents last week, I'm sure he probably won't do this, but if I were Brett Kavanaugh, I would sue them all for defamation.
Oh, would you?
I can imagine Christine Blasey Ford trying to run for some political office at this point.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, very true.
Although she is pretty much an old bag. Like, how old is she exactly?
Just 52, maybe. I think just a few years under Kavanaugh. She claimed
he does not age well. I tell you.
Yeah, certainly. There are definitely women out there who have aged better.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this totally overthrows the notion that women never lie. And the other thing they say, those who are saying, well, we shouldn't punish false accusers because it discourages real victims from coming forward. No, it encourages people to understand that if you're going to accuse someone of something like this, you better have the evidence to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just let go the lies, it's going to encourage more people to say, hey, it's safe for me to lie about this person when I don't like
get away with it.
Yeah, they have nothing if they know they can never be punished, then it'll never change this. Every any equivalent situation now, all a woman has to do to end a man's career is just claim, he sexually assaulted me. Well, we got to believe survivors. And of course, the funny thing about that, we believe survivors. Well, doesn't that assume they are in fact survivors, which is exactly what we're trying to prove?
Pretty much. We're already giving them the title to what they want.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do hope that Monroe Layton is the first to be referred for charges, and I do hope that Michael Avenatti and Julie Swetnick will be joining those ranks. If not, Christine Blasey Ford and Deborah Ramirez.
That would be great.
All right. Moving on. One of my favorite political figures right now, Miss Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has a message for New York voters in light of the upcoming elections this Tuesday. Earlier this week, she sent an email out to as many voters as possible. Townhall.com reports that the following is a direct quote from her email. 6 days from now, we can defeat the brutal white supremacist forces of anti-Semitism, anti-immigrant nativism, and racism. We can hold accountable the cold-hearted monsters who have repeatedly attacked our health care. We can send a message to the bigots and billionaires that this country belongs to all of us. We can win if we show up on November 6th. We must end Republican control of Congress and begin to reclaim our nation, end quote. She went on to claim that the Pittsburgh shooter last weekend was tied to the Republican control of Congress and the presidency of Donald Trump directly. So basically, Miss Ocasio-Cortez believes that the Trump administration and the construction of Congress in its current form is literally the Third Reich.
No.
Talk about overgeneralizations on that point.
Yes. Now, a point that the mainstream media has repeatedly ignored is the fact that, and as I've talked about before, I don't really want to be a conspiracy theorist. I will say a lot of the facts about the shooter in Pittsburgh don't seem to add up, but nonetheless, just assuming this guy was just a crazy anti-Semite who acted of his own accord, one fact that mainstream media outlets are not talking about is that on his Gab account, he not only said all kinds of things about Jews, he said specifically that he hated Donald Trump because Donald Trump was controlled by Jews. So he was pretty anti-Trump and had a lot of anti-Trump things to say, yet not hearing about that from the mainstream media or Ocasio-Cortez.
Seems that the guy is just an anti-everything Illuminati conspiracy theorist. Like it goes past Alex Jones level, maybe even.
Oh yeah.
Oh jeez.
Mm-hmm. But he was no fan of Trump, so trying to claim that Trump was responsible for the shooter is ridiculous. But also just the notion that Donald Trump is literally Hitler and that a Republican-controlled Congress amounts to white supremacy and anti-Semitism.
It's beyond me.
Yeah, it's I think it's been said, if your arguments are good, pound in law school. Up and coming lawyers are told, if your arguments are good, pound the arguments. If your arguments are bad, pound the table and pound it hard. Miss Ocamio had an opportunity to debate with her political opponent, Dr. Pappas, who is a economics professor. Right before the debate, she canceled and decided not to. Jake Tapper, of all people, had to call her out on national television for not knowing how she was going to fund the $40 trillion worth of new programs she wants to add to the federal budget over the next 10 years. The woman you can say many things about Miss Ocamio, but knowing what she's talking about is not one of them.
Not at all. Our debt ratio is out of control as is, and adding that much more. We just might as well throw the whole country in a bucket.
All right. Night shift. Looks like you made it.
Yeah, it's finally working. How's everyone doing?
Oh, doing great. How are you?
Oh, beautiful right now.
All right. You have anything? Did you manage to hear the quote from Miss Ocamio's email?
Oh, God. What did she say again?
Okay, I'll repeat it one more time for the sake of night shift. The following was sent out to New York voters this past week. 6 days from now, we can defeat the brutal white supremacist forces of anti-Semitism, anti-immigrant nativism, and racism. We can hold accountable the cold-hearted monsters who have repeatedly attacked our healthcare. We can send a message to the bigots and billionaires that this country belongs to all of us. We can win if we show up on November 6th. We must end Republican control of Congress and begin to reclaim our nation, end quote. And then she went on to say that the Pittsburgh shooting last weekend was directly the fault of Republican control of Congress and, of course, the Fuhrer himself, Donald Trump.
Oh, my God.
If you want to say that somebody's rhetoric encouraged somebody to do this shooting, that would be indirect. I mean, it's one thing for you to say that it would be indirect for you, but for you to say that it is direct, that would almost be implying like there was like specific orders given directly to that person to go out shooting, or like there was money given or something like that. Do you have any evidence of that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And what's worse, from what I can tell, the only direct calls for violence coming from any politicians are coming from Maxine Waters, who is specifically telling her constituents to harass Republicans. If you see them in a public place, don't let them have a moment of peace. Tell them they're not welcome wherever it is they are. Or Hillary Clinton, who specifically said on national television that there can be no civility with people on the right until Democrats take back Congress.
Yep, and when I bring this up with my left friends, they just seem to ignore me.
Technically not a call to violence, but it still there's still like a high possibility of things getting physical with what Maxine Waters is saying there, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's harassment either way. I mean,
yeah, harassment.
You're harassing people just because of their political beliefs, and what's the point in that? I mean, it's like they're getting in people's faces for nothing.
Point is political fear.
Yeah, exactly. Political terrorism, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, unfortunately, Ocamio is probably going to win. She's from New York, and she, despite the fact that another thing the media is not talking about is that some of her biggest supporters are, in fact, wealthy, white New York billionaires. But nonetheless, she's probably going to win, and if any of her policies go through, well, it's been said, win through action, never through argument. If she can't be convinced by reason, she'll have to be convinced when her policies cause the country to crash and burn.
Yeah, I think it's more terrifying that she won't be able to do much, but her winning the election will encourage others to be just like her to run in other states.
Well, they've already, commentators are already calling her the new face of the Democratic Party. Which, to let everyone know, myself and Night Shift have a collab coming out this week, reviewing some of her statements. So stay tuned for that. But
can't wait for that either.
Yes, but anyway, so Ocasio-Cortez literally thinks that Donald Trump has brought about the Third Reich, and voting for her is the only thing anyone can do to stop it. I don't think much more needs to be said about that. Moving on, next news story that is really not being covered in the mainstream media at all, but if you're on YouTube, you probably know about it. the Daily Caller reports that a YouTube channel run by Ralph, what's his last name?
I don't remember what his last name is, but Ralph Retort is like the name of the channel.
Yeah. They don't list his full name in the article here, but Ralph, he runs a YouTube channel with a very popular show that is known that some alt-right, more white nationalist type people tend to watch and post comments. He attempted to raise money for St. Jude Children's Hospital during a stream using super chats. Essentially, people would, send their super chats and the money was going to be donated to St. Jude's Hospital, which they raised about $26,000. Now, Ralph was contacted by the Wall Street Journal shortly thereafter, claiming that they were about to run an article, and which they did, and they claimed that the stream was nothing but white supremacists, neo-Nazis posting hateful messages in the super chat. Well, as a result, St. Jude Hospital has refunded the donations. Ralph was kicked off YouTube, as I understand it. Well, at first banned, the super chat function was disabled, and as I understand now, he has been completely taken off of YouTube. Of course, he called out the Wall Street Journal with the hashtag campaign, Wall Street Journal kills kids, noting the likely connection between the timing of the article and the refund of the donations.
I've got a question. Like, is Ralph himself an alt-writer? Because I honestly don't know.
That I honestly, to be honest, I did not know about this channel until this story broke, so I can't comment definitively on that.
I take it neither YouTube have any hints on that either.
Well, the channel's gone, so that I wouldn't know. I guess it's entirely possible that he may have been alt-right leaning. It's also possible that he really wasn't, and just there were a number of alt-righters who frequented his site. Nonetheless, the St. Jude's Children's Hospital, whether they were strong-armed into it or decided on it themselves, some powerfully placed people have decided better not to have $26,000 go towards research to fighting cancer in children and things like that if the money is coming from white supremacists.
I'm sorry. They turned down a donation of $26,000.
Because the money came from white supremacists.
That is idiotic. That is completely idiotic. That money will go to help those kids, and they're turning it down for political reasons.
Yes,
You've got to be kidding me.
And I'm not really following the logic here, because if you give those people back the money, how do you? I'm just going to assume, for the sake of argument, that everyone in this live stream posted nothing but hateful, anti-Semitic, racist, I want to kill everyone who's not white kind of tweets. I seriously doubt that's what happened, but let's just imagine for a moment it was. You refund all the money back to those people. What do you think they're going to do with it now? Perhaps they'll donate it to the Ku Klux Klan or some other group, but it's not. But in any case, you just gave money back to these alleged monsters, and at least when you had it, it would have gone to, helping children with cancer and other diseases. Now, who knows what it's going to go to?
Yep, yeah, stubborn pride will kill you.
These guys are just trolls, is what they are, the alt-right commenters, or they're idiots, because, I would only presume that some of the children within St. Jude, there would be some minority kids. So in a way, it's kind of idiotic on their own part. And also, it's still money to save kids' lives, and yet Wall Street Journal wants to throw a bitch fit about this. The WSJ is acting like an SJW in this.
Yes, what a surprise.
Oh, yes.
I just had to do that wordplay there. That's all.
I like it.
It was good.
Yes. Well, yeah, I'm not sure there really is more to be said about that. I see Hey Dude 77 says the super chats were refunded to the donors. Yes, that's what I don't know if you just joined, but I noted that already, that the money got refunded to the people who donated. So now on the subject of alt-right trolls, I think it is safe to say that many of the majority of the alt-right community appears to be trolls. Obviously you have some of the more major figures like Richard Spencer, Millennial Woes, that speak out more intelligently. But I would seriously wonder how many in that in the so-called internet alt-right, how many are genuinely convicted white nationalists and how many are just internet trolls. That I would love to find out.
Well, it's the same thing on Antifa's side. I mean, most of them are trolls too. So, I mean, you do got to wonder about these things, like how many of them are convicted of their cause, and how many of them are just trolls. How many of them are just screwing around, just causing nonsense. Ugh. I don't know. Probably not many.
All right. Well, those are the three major news stories I have. So if any of you guys have anything else you'd like to bring up at this point, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, I do have the weekly hottie in waiting, as always.
Well, like I said in the group chat, I had a little thing to add here. I mean, talking about the caravan, because you had some comments to talk about the migrant caravan, did you? Didn't use 2 cents?
Yes, I did. I know I talked about it last week.
I don't intend to read this entire article, but basically 3/4 of migrants in the caravan are adult men. So one of the main heartstrings being pulled when it comes to immigrants, like when it comes to refugees or etc., is that most of them are women and children. You know, I mean, not that it gets that much to me, but still, I mean, just to debunk that little bit of heartstring pulling right there. There's this bit of evidence here that there's the debunkery right there for, at least in this case, anyways. Yeah. So what's the big time motivation for you to be taking in all this massive amount of immigrants again? I mean, it's probably votes, the usual, you know.
Yeah. Well, as I've said, what's the saddest part about this whole discussion is the only reason there's an immigration problem is because of the government in the first place. If we had a truly libertarian society, then if person A living in Mexico City wants to move to Colorado Springs because person B in Colorado Springs wants to hire him and thinks he's the best person for the job, then go ahead. Who is that hurting? However, when you've got laws in place that, citizens in the United States must be paid a minimum wage, but, undocumented immigrants, you can pay less and they can't go to the police because they know it'll get them deported. Well, now it creates a situation where employers have a huge incentive to employ undocumented immigrants as opposed to citizens. You've got anti-discrimination laws where if you don't hire a certain number of ethnic minorities, well, that again artificially forces employers to try to hire ethnic minorities. You've got laws that say you can't ask a person for an ID when they come into a voting booth. Well, that means that undocumented immigrants are probably going to vote. And who are they going to vote for? I'd say probably the ones who are promising them free citizenship, free healthcare, free welfare, the whole kit and caboodle, whatever you'd like. It's not hard to see that when these kind of policies are in place with your government, now you suddenly have an immigration problem. So I would say, well, I'm libertarian in principle on the issue of borders. I don't think anyone has any business telling you if business owners want to hire people from another country and that's their business. But if the government has artificially created all these other problems, well, then until some major other reforms are taking place, you can't just let massive groups of people into the country. And that is, I mean, the Democrats haven't even been quiet about this. That's their plan. They know they can't elect extremists or I shouldn't use the term extremists, but people with the kinds of views as Bernie and Ocamio are not going to get elected under the current demographic system. They have to rapidly change the demographics with people who are going to vote for them. And what better way to do that than promise a lot of poor people from the third world that if they come here, they'll have all the free stuff they could ever want.
That's kind of a bit of the irony there. They want to give all these people a higher minimum wage, and yet with the case of illegal immigrants, they're just practically encouraging more illegal immigration by offering out amnesty, which is just going to end up in people actually not given the minimum wage. They're going to see this as an opportunity of, cheap labor that I can sneak under the law for, And also on the principle of borders, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist myself. I mean, I find it to be like a good ideal, I would say, and I would not mind so much if we did like go to Ancapistan. But I think that if there is to be like a government, that the job of the government is to protect its own citizens, the citizens that live within the piece of land that it controls. Tying it into immigration, in this case, it should be to like protect the citizens from being like mauled over by criminals, or in this case, like MS-13 gang members, etc.
Okay. Well, and I guess there's a lot to say there, and I would say perhaps you and I should have a live stream discussion sometimes about perhaps if you're coming from a more minarchist side, perhaps we could have a good discussion about that. That would be great. But I would agree also that so long as if I'm answering the question from okay, I understanding I'm an ANCAP and I would like us to be living in an ANCAP society. It isn't currently an ANCAP society, and the kinds of reform we need to have open borders aren't going to happen overnight. That being said, what action should the government take? I would say, yeah, as it stands right now, we do need to have border security. You just can't have people flooding through because for all the reasons I've mentioned, but also as you mentioned, there's not a proper way to vet whether or not people are members of these highly organized criminal organizations, whether or not they intend to come in to do harm. I would say, citizens should have the capability to protect themselves, but under current laws, that's not always the case. People not everyone has a firearm, and if you live in certain states, the laws do not permit you to carry a firearm for your own protection. If you attempt to defend yourself from an ethnic minority who is, even if they're attacking you, you may be charged with a hate crime. So, yeah, we need border security as an unfortunate side effect of other policies that the government has put into place.
Well, one thing also, this caravan is also pretty reminiscent of the refugees, of the Syrian refugees that were going into Europe, or that were being integrated into Europe, and that are being integrated into Europe. And this migrant caravan is very much like that for us. And I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same factors. I mean, with them, they were integrating refugees from the third world. For us, we're immigrating them from the third world, and we're going to have a lot of the same problems that they're having now, more than likely. And I mean, honestly, you're right. Things are not going to be healed overnight, but we do need to be moving towards that, or what my 2 cents talked about, or we need to be moving towards more border security, because, I mean, without one or the other, this isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm. All right. Taking a look at the comment section here.
My thoughts also is...
Go ahead.
My thoughts about that too is always best to try to encourage the best people to stay in their location so they can improve their own country. By taking all the best and bringing it here, you leave no one behind to help improve their own their own country or land.
Mm-hmm. Okay, conservative Californian, I see your comment about the president-elect in Brazil. I would comment on. I'm aware of that. I will say that is one news story I have unfortunately not had the time to do adequate research on, so I couldn't really comment on that with anything meaningful. I don't know if anyone else knows more about that. The president Jair Bolsonaro, recently elected in Brazil.
Is he a fascist?
Well, that's what they're saying.
That's what everyone was saying.
Well, they're saying he's a fascist, but he's getting rid of the commies. So, I mean,
yeah, it's like I said. I have not really. I've heard this story third hand. Really, I haven't had an opportunity to research it myself. It's my understanding that he's really just more of a right-wing nationalist, a Donald Trump type figure for Brazil. And predictably, the people on the far left are calling him a fascist. Well, I mean, look what they're saying about President Trump.
Well, and I would love for him to. I would love for him to convert to maybe more our ideology of libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism. But I mean, one good thing he's doing is he's really kicking out communism. He's throwing the communists out there, and that's a good idea all around, in my opinion. So, whatever it is.
Of course. Tinseltown Queen says, aren't all independent thinkers fascists nowadays? Yeah, according to the hive mind that is the left.
Yes, exactly. To the leftists, yes.
All right. Anyways, I suppose it's about that time to unveil the weekly hottie. So if I could have one of you guys give me a drum roll. All right, so for the weekly hottie this week, I've kind of been trying to get away from using the Sports Illustrated models. I know I used a lot of them early on, and I've kind of tried to get more to these, lower, not quite as famous Instagram types who have worked really hard to get themselves out there. Nonetheless, this particular video of Kate Upton was released, and I thought it was pretty darn hot. So without further ado, Kate Upton is the weekly hottie. She has been before. It's been a while though, so link posted there. Let me see if I can quick screen share this.
And another thing about the Sports Illustrated models, they're all rather skinny.
Well, Kate Upton's always hot, so.
Everybody got my screen share going, or?
Nope.
Your screen share is working, but you keep on. Oh, there you are.
There we go.
That works.
All right. Before they copyright claim that, I'll pause it, but the link is in the chat.
Kate
Upton
has tits, I'll say, but anything else? There's not much else. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just a bit biased because I lean more towards black girls personally.
All right. Well, I will say no one's complimenting Kate Upton for her brain. That's definitely she's shown to maybe have some issues on that front, but no one can argue she's probably worked pretty hard to get that body. So.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for checking out today's live edition of Today with 2 Cents. Everybody go ahead and give themselves a shout out. Dark Conservatarian, I suppose you can go first.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm the Dark Conservatarian, conservative, libertarian, Christian, capitalist, political, ranting edgelord. I have my own channel where I talk about politics and the news mainly. I do response videos to the same likes that 2 Cents has responded to before. Sahil, the progressive voice, Habibi. Try to say that last name without grinning a bit. And Kyle Kalinsky, amongst others. Also, I have a little news show that I call Strike Force. And I'll be doing one tomorrow afternoon or evening, sometime after 12 as well. But I also do Hangout streams. And so, yeah, check out my channel. And I would like to thank 2 Cents here for gladly having me on. It's been an honor, sir.
Thank you for being here. Night Shift.
Name's Night Shift 10,000. Don't really make content, but I've been here on YouTube for a while. Love following my 2 Cents. Love following these guys. And you should follow them too. I mean, if you want good content, if you want good videos, give them a follow. Give them a subscribe. They're awesome. I mean, can't say much more than that.
All right. And Night Shift and I are, as I said, we got a collab coming out later this week. As an elite level patron, he has the privilege of being in at least one of my videos every month.
Oh, yeah.
And Scorch88.
I'm Scorch88. I'm a good supporter, and I just love to listen to the videos. I also like to subscribe to pretty much all the other end caps out there. But you should keep your minds open and listen to many views.
All right. Perfect note to end on. So, for everybody out there, that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth.